With every passing day, the discipline of data science becomes closer and closer to crystal clear. Practically any company in the world can get involved now because algorithms are so much more available. If you're wondering how this can apply to you and your company, look no further. Just listen to Eric Kavanagh as he interviews several guests, including Gurul Kurt of Alterna CX, Mary McCarthy of High Touch, and Zora Ladha of Tridence.
The future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed. Yet. Today's world teems with innovation. The nexus of hardware, software, and human ingenuity promises a revolution in possibilities. What does tomorrow look like? Witness future proof.
Yours truly, Eric Kavanagh here. And what a fun show we have today, folks. We're going to talk about a very, very hot topic in our industry. It's been crystallizing for the last few years now, quite frankly, data science. So the title is Crystallizing Now. Data science comes of age. Yes, indeed. We've talked about it for a number of years, and data science is more than just predictive analytics, for example, or throwing algorithms around. I like to say that data science really is the assiduous management of data assets at scale for the benefit of an organization. And so we're seeing data science platforms become very robust. We're seeing a lot more companies understanding the sort of end-to-end process. We've had predictive models for years. It's nothing new. We've had lots of different component parts of technologies, but really it is sort of coalescing right now into a very cohesive picture to understand what it is. And in the past, we've done shows like data science versus data management. Will one subsume the other? I've argued that data science really kind of probably should subsume data management, at least to a certain degree, if you're doing it correctly. Because remember, what is science? And just real quick, I'll just give my take on this, my elevator pitch, if you will. A lot of folks believe that science is some sort of representation of the real world that is perfect and accurate, and that's just not the case at all. Science is a discipline. It is underpinned by a methodology, which we call the scientific method. And really incumbent upon the scientist is the responsibility to do things in a very orderly fashion, to keep track of things. Don't change more than one variable at one time, for example, because you want to be able to repeat what you've done, right? I remember hearing that some people were talking about the repeatability problem in data science. And I'm like, well, guys, if you have a repeatability problem, you're probably not really doing data science. You're probably doing something close, so some approximate to data science. But again, if you're doing things scientifically, you want to be able to repeat it because you want to really understand what's happening and what you're doing so that you can optimize whatever process you're looking to improve. So we'll talk about all those things today with our several guests. Very excited to have Gurul Kurt out there from a company Alterna CX. We're also going to hear from our new friend Zara Ladha from a company called Tridence. And then last but not least, Mary McCarthy is on the show from a company called High Touch. They're doing reverse ETL. So we've got lots of different pieces and parts of the picture. So let's go around the room and just get introductions from everyone. First, Gurul Kurt, tell us a bit about you, yourself, and what you folks are doing at Alterna CX.
Sure. Thank you, Eric, for having me. I'm very glad to be here together with Zora and Mary. So I'm a co-founder of Alterna CX. We are an AI-based voice of customer solution. We help companies generate promoter customers, grow them through upsell, cross-sell offerings, and retain them. And we do basically three things to help them with. We capture structured and unstructured data everywhere at every touch point. Secondly, we use our AI models to make predictions on what is driving satisfaction, what are the root causes of satisfaction. And then finally, we trigger actions, the necessary and most relevant improvement action whenever we come across a dissatisfied customer. So we close the loop, in other words. And that's how we help our customers through making use of our AI technologies.
I love it. And let's go around the room here. We'll talk to Zara Ledha from Tridence. Tell us a bit about yourself and what you're doing at Tridence in the broader data science space.
Hello, hi Eric, hi Gurul, and hi Mary. This is Zora. I work at Tridence and I lead the data science practice at Tridence. Tridence is essentially, I would say, it's a data science solutions and an AI solutions provider. We work with a variety of Fortune 100, 200 clients to use AI ML to solve for, to solve for their business and social and economic problems. One thing that Trident specifically focuses on is the last mile adoption, which is essentially about bridging the gap between insight creation to value realization to delivering and measuring business value, which is very, very important when it comes to AI ML, because essentially, well, it's all about using the machine learning and the AI to be able to deliver value and to be able to realize, substantial impact. And if we're not able to measure and if we're not able to realize that, most of the AI and ML is pretty much redundant. So that's something that as an organization we lay great stress on, which is the last mile adoption.
Yeah, I like that. Last mile, it's important. It's like getting into the end zone. You can drive all the way downfield. If you don't punch it in the end zone, you just,
Absolutely.
got your team tired, worn out, probably a bit more bruised, and you didn't even get any points. Sometimes you got to take the 3, folks. Take the 3 points. Just get on the board, right? At least you get something. Last but not least, Mary McCarthy, which is like Jill Smith in Ireland, I'm told. And of course, I've got an Irish last name as well. Kavanagh. Where'd you get an Irish name like that? An Irishman once asked me. I said, from my father. And then he accused me of being a Viking. So I thought that was kind of funny. But
love it. Yes.
Mary, tell us about
Kavanaugh's a very Irish name. Apologies in advance to the audience if my Chihuahua barks. I had to get up and put her in my lap. Okay. So hopefully she'll be quiet. I'm speaking to you from my home base in Los Angeles. I work as a data advocate for a company called High Touch, which we all know what the data warehouse is. High Touch helps you get the data out of your warehouse through a process called reverse ETL, or more broadly, data activation. So I don't strictly work, Eric, in the data science space. I have studied data science, love learning about it, love hearing what Gaurav and Zora have to say. But I'll admit I'm also a data science skeptic. I think that what an awful lot of companies need is not data science and AI and ML. It's just better data management, the basics of the good warehouse and, good processes. So I may end up playing a bit of a devil's advocate here over the next hour. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I was kind of hinting at that in my opening, that understanding what data science is pretty important, because if you don't understand what it is, you're going to spend a lot of money doing interesting things that may or may not help the business. And that's actually a great segue to bring Zara back into the conversation, because you talk about the last mile. You talk about making sure that you are getting business value from this. So if you think about, of course, no application can survive without data, right? Every application needs data, no matter what it is or what it does. It needs some form of data to come in and go out the other way. And some workflow, some process. We're now in this remarkable transformation that is industry-wide, that is global. Companies everywhere are redesigning workflows to optimize use of the cloud, for example, to use the edge. Like there's another architectural change to sort through. But maybe, Zara, if you could walk us through, when you talk about last mile, what does Trident deliver that allows you to provide a conduit for business change? And then you also talked about tracking. So what are you measuring to help the business understand if this is working or not?
Absolutely. Yes, data is the foundation for any data science that you do, right? And you're right. Today we're at a place where the data assets that we have, they're all there, they're all in place, and they're ready to be consumed, and they're all integrated and synchronized. What we do at Trident essentially is we bring in a lot of our frameworks that enable us to build the data science flows more seamlessly, and we leverage our experience across industries, across clients to bring in more generic frameworks. When you specifically talked about how do you ensure that what we're building drives value, I think that's the starting point. Actually, that's where we begin with most of the time. Every time, which is, what is it that you want to derive out of this, right? It's more about first defining the value that you want to drive out of this. Are you looking at profitability? Are you looking at customer satisfaction? And then it's going back to how do you then solve for this problem? So when you have that in place, and that's essentially the approach that we do is first we define the object, we define the problem statement, and then we work towards the solution rather than the other way around, which is most of the times a vanilla approach, right, of building data science. I think that changes the game, because then you have an end objective in mind, and then you're working towards that, and then you're building the right ML to drive that value, and then measuring that value and realizing that value becomes very easy.
Oh, that's interesting. And you bring up a couple good points here, which is, where do you actually leverage machine learning? So for the benefit of our audience, there are lots of different things that machine learning and AI can do, and they're increasingly interchangeable terms, though there are some discrete differences, at least if you get down to brass tacks. But ML and AI are very, very good at sorting through vast amounts of data and finding outliers. Like, that's one of the things they're very good at doing. Classification, right? I view most AI as doing one of two things generally. Classification, like grouping, clustering, for example. These customers are in category A, these customers are in category B. Yes, there might be some overlap, but it kind of helps you understand how to communicate to this group versus that group. And the other thing is optimizing a decision point, like pricing. Should we have this at $32 or $30? How much do we lose if we jack it up to $40? These are the kinds of things that AI and ML can generally do. Is that about right, Zara?
No, I think you're right. I think AI ML can definitely do this and much more. You talked about it. It enables classification and grouping of customers or of personas. It also enables disaggregation of personas in that way, right? It also enables you to get to that segment of one where each customer of yours is unique, and if you're able to identify that unique characteristic in each customer, which is what we call as the hyper-personalization of customers. Yes, optimization is also a great place where we use AI ML, but essentially AI ML today is being used to solve for a vast majority of things, whether it's supply chain problems, it's customer personalization, product pricing, transportation logistics, it's climate or weather predictions. I think it's endless. I feel that in terms of the what you can do with AI ML is endless right now. So.
Yeah, and real quick before I bring in another guest to comment on this, you referenced something that I picked up from my days working with SAP, which of course is a big player in the supply chain space, and that is the supply chain of one. That's what they were talking about, which is this hyper-personalization thing, which is very interesting. If you look at some of the bigger, more advanced brands out there, they will have models not just for a group of people, but for each person or for each company or each partner. Now you have to run the numbers and make sure you're getting value from that. But just talk real quickly about the power of hyper-personalization and why that might make sense for a company.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think it does, right? In today's world of data chaos, if I may put in, right? And with customers being exposed to so many things out there, differentiation, has become even more difficult. So when it is about, talking about something unique to your customer, which is where I think hyper-personalization plays a great role. And it is about, the end objective is always to be able to get to that segment of one, where if you can identify that unique trait within a customer, if you can identify that unique product that you want or service that you want to talk to your customer about, and and the right way to talk about, whether it's the channel or it's the wordings, and if you can build in that level of personalization, then that's where you bring in the differentiation, and that's where you catch eyeballs, so you're able to grab the customer's attention. So I think it's absolutely important in today's world to aim for hyper-personalization and to drive hyper-personalization, because with the clutter going around, in people's that people are exposed to, that's the only way to stand out.
In all things data science, and as I mentioned at the top of the show here, I view data science really as the totality of processes around which you manage data. So you capture data, you refine data, you enrich data, you deliver data. All of that is part and parcel to data science as a discipline, as a practice. And I think what's really great about it is that, again, you have this discipline that is baked into the scientific process. And that really should have been there always with data, but it just kind of wasn't. In many ways, data was an afterthought. And you can see this if you go back to the beginning of computers. Well, where was the data? It was on punch cards that you would stick in there. Even the first computer I had, the first portable computer, I should say, it was a compact portable back in the year of our Lord, 1986 or 7 or something. It was like 50 pounds. It was heavy. And you would load the OS on a floppy drive, and then all the data was stored on floppy drives. Not a very efficient way to store data, as it turns out. Turns out floppy drives are not so great. But my point is that you could tell that data itself was kind of an afterthought, which is bizarre. Like, why would you have it as an afterthought? But it was early in the days, right? So we still had to build stuff around it. But these days, data, of course, is central to all of it. I mean, data warehouses are everywhere these days. Data lakes are everywhere these days. We have these lake houses we talk about. But the point is you have to pull the data in, make some use of it quickly, and then push it back out. And that's the space of so-called reverse ETL. So Mary McCarthy, that's your space. So you folks help companies take data from the warehouse and fuel their applications with it to enrich the applications, right? To get the latest data, to get the latest numbers, to get the latest insights into the day-to-day business applications that run the organization, right, Mary?
That's right. High Touch is very much a warehouse-centric technology. If customers come to us and say, we want to implement High Touch, we're like, well, first you have a warehouse as your single source of truth. I wouldn't usually refer to that type of knowledge as science, but I kind of like this way you're talking about data science is doing things in the right way, the right processes. Sometimes we use more the analogy of software engineering lately, but it really is doing things scientifically so that you have you don't have one metric up here that says one thing and one metric over here that says another thing, and a different number down here, which the reality of many companies is that your data is kind of a swamp. It's all over the place and you have inconsistent metrics. So if you set up your warehouse properly, get your data in there, unify it, enrich it, transform it, that's beautiful. That's great. You've got a great data warehouse. But what happens there? Unfortunately, that becomes yet another data silo. Right. So the beauty of reverse ETL and our brand of it at High Touch is then we will help you get it back out to the business tools that your teams actually work in, whether that's the CRM like Salesforce or HubSpot, or your marketing tools, your ad spend tools, even other internal databases where you need that data. But again, it's all consistent, enriched data from that single source of truth. Sounds really obvious. You'd think this is how things would have been done all along, but data evolved in a way that wasn't necessarily scientific. And then the reality of those essentially pipelines is that they are hard to build. And when you buy a tool like High Touch, we do that for you. It's a plug and play. It works fast. The pipelines are built automatically. I think we integrate with over 100 destinations, and we maintain it for you. So we take all that hard, many hours of long data engineering work, which is frankly really expensive, and we do all that for you with our product.
Yeah, I have a tagline I'll throw. It's a play on words, of course, with the famous Las Vegas tagline. But what happens in the warehouse should not stay in the warehouse, right, Mary?
That's exactly it. Again, we're working towards, as data professionals, towards ending the siloing of data. We want data to be empowering business decisions, but if it's stuck in another silo, that's no good to us. At most, it's going then to analytics, which analytics is great, but that is like one step towards eventually making business decisions. Whereas with reverse ETL, we're getting it straight back into places where you can use it that day in real time. Your marketing tools, your sales tools, your ad tools. So we're not saying we're replacing analytics. Will always be a place for analytics and BI, but we're giving you this other way of also using your data in parallel.
Which is really, really, really important. So you talk about data silos, and there are also departmental silos, right? There are organizational hierarchies that tend to foster siloed approaches to things, which is not very good. You don't want your salespeople in a different world from your marketing people. You don't want admin in a different world altogether, accounting. What you really want is for all these departments to be connected, and you want that connective tissue to be the data and the data flows, right, Mary?
Yeah, and you want it accessible. Like our tool, you write to get the data from the warehouse into those tools. You don't even have to know SQL. You can write the models to send it there, to sync it in SQL, or you can do it in a no-code way for people who aren't SQL users. But yes, our mission very much is to get people with access to the same data and the same metrics, so that we're working in a way that truly has, as you say, each team, each department, data-driven. We all talk about, data-driven companies, but most of us who work in data know that most companies aren't data-driven. I mean, the other guests might feel differently, but that's what I've seen.
Yeah, well, and there are sort of levels and depths, if you will, of being data driven. But what I love is that, in the warehouse world, and just for some context here for our audience's benefit, we built data warehouses because people figured out 40 years ago that it was really hard to query an operational system. Like your ERP was not designed for giving visibility into trends and things of this nature. And so they figured out, wait a minute, let's go ahead and pull this data out and we'll load it. That's the ETL, right? We extract it from the source system, like an ERP, enterprise resource planning, transform it into a particular schema, and then load it into the warehouse. And of course, the analysis was done in the warehouse by a handful of people who would go, we should buy more red suits next year instead of blue suits. And then they would email someone and say, hey, why don't you buy more red suits instead of blue suits? And they came back and said, well, I don't really like those blue suits, or I don't like the red suits, why I want to do that. And it was this sort of offline process that's not terribly efficient. And what you really want is for the warehouse to be the trusted source of purified information. And then you want to open those spigots to send the targeted data back to the different applications where it matters most. So for marketing, you want to know, who are my high value targets? Who do I want to be marketing to with these services? For accounting, you want to know, well, how quickly do I need these numbers versus those numbers? There are all these different use cases around that, but the key is that you do want to have this trusted source. That's the warehouse, and then high touch comes in to sort of hydrate all the other applications, right, Mary?
That's exactly it. And you can bring the data science models into that. Ideally, your data science model can be stored also in your warehouse. And then say you have some brilliant data scientists who built a propensity score for which customers are most likely to buy a certain product when. Well, then let's get that out to the people who can use it the most, the ad people, the sales team, the marketing team. So as much as I said I'm a data science skeptic, I'm more of a let's talk about data science and how it fits into the rest of the data infrastructure, I think is, to me, the discussion that sometimes is being left out, that obviously you're very much an expert on. I think you're also a data infrastructure nerd, Eric.
Yeah, I know. I'm a geek. It's true. I get into this stuff. It's exciting. But and what I think our audience should understand here is that everyone on this call can collaborate. It's not like you're going to go with high touch or Treatance or alternate CX. There are different use cases, but they're all built around the data foundation, if you will. And what I keep proposing to folks is that data science really represents a maturation of the data management world and an appreciation for what's out there. Observability, for example, is this, we hear about it all the time now. That's not because it wasn't there before. It's because we are able to observe so much more than we were able to observe 5 and 10 years ago due to lots of different things that are happening. And maybe, Zara, I'll throw it over to you to kind of comment on that. We're constantly in this constantly changing world where there are more information sources coming online. We can do more with it. We need to personalize more. So individual companies really need to be focused on that last mile to bring your concept into the picture here. And I think that that's a good place to start, if you will, because again, if you're a business person, I just gave a webinar this morning talking about assumptions, priorities, and execution, right? Are going to go APE on people, APE. You make certain assumptions about the marketplace, what you're doing, what your tech stack is, then you build your priorities around that. How can we make more money or get new customers or whatever? And then you execute, and then you just continuously go back and reevaluate. Now I have different assumptions, and we're really in one of those periods of time right now, Zara, I feel, where we are coming full circle on lots of different issues, and we can start having much more practical conversations about how to apply AI and ML. It used to be sort of a great thing in search of a use case. Now we got lots and lots of use cases. The key is how quickly can we get them done and how effectively can we get them done, right?
Absolutely. No, I think that is true. Today, I think there is no debate on, how you can use AI ML or what it can be used for. And there are thousands and thousands of use cases that anybody can come up with. It's about, which ones do you prioritize first and how do you prioritize? And again, at Treatance, this is wherein we bring in, we work with we have our own in-house accelerators and frameworks that we bring in that, first of all, and that starts across the entire life cycle, right from being able to prioritize your use cases, which ones are, quick to the market and high impact, or, how do you prioritize your use cases on various metrics? It could be business outcomes, it could be speed to implementation. It could be a combination of a lot of things, but it is about first being able to prioritize these use cases, and then using the infrastructure and using the platforms to be able to build it. And I think one thing that I'd like to mention and bring about here is also about explainability of AI, which is becoming increasingly important today.
Sure.
And that's something that again at Tredence we specifically focus on, because there is so much, so far we've always been focused, and this is also one of the things that is very relevant about the new age data science, and which is coming in, because so far the focus has always been on getting the right accuracy, getting the models being able to predict, but now the focus is moving on why and how and what is happening, and being able to explain what is happening. And that is also extremely important, because like you said, we have so much data, there's so much sensitive information out there, and it's so important to be able to not only prioritize the right use cases, but build the right ML, that is in line with business ethics, with a lot of things. And that's again something that at Tredence we specifically focus on. So I think it's the whole life cycle. It's not just about prioritizing use cases, but also prioritizing the AI ML that you're using to build these use cases.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And explainability, just so our audience understands, there is this concept of a black box. And for years, a lot of analytical software was delivered as a black box, meaning the company bought a particular technology. They came in and say, okay, we're going to optimize your pricing for these different widgets that you're selling, and you'll just have to trust us that it works. And in a lot of cases, it did work because they came up with good models. They just didn't want to share what those models were. And it's interesting, I'm pretty sure that the open source movement, which of course started with Linux and Linus Torvalds, and then kind of climbed up the stack. The Apache web server was the first one out of Apache. Now we have Hadoop. We have all these open source projects. I mean, there are hundreds of them, folks, hundreds of them. Not all of them get big, but they're out there. And I think they really changed the dynamics about what people expect and what people want. And there are lots of benefits to open source. I mean, it's not perfect like anything. There are some downsides too, but and I'll throw this over to Kurt from Alterna CX to kind of comment on, but I do believe that the spirit of transparency has really taken hold, and that's good for lots of reasons. One of which, they say with open source, bad code goes away because you got a lot of eyes focused on the code. You get the community collaborating to build things. You even have committers at staunch competitors working together on a particular project, because a rising tide lifts all boats. But the explainability, I think, is great, and it's kind of spinning out of that spirit of transparency. But what do you think, Gaurav?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, explainability as well as actionability. I'll make an addition around actionability.
Yeah, right.
Because we can analyze the data as much as we want, and we can create a myriad of data in terms of insights, in terms of quantity. But when we don't take action, it's no good for anybody. So at Alterna, we focused on a couple of things. First, we said, what are the things, what are the experiences that are creating certain emotions in the customers? So what's making them happy? What's making them sad, angry, excited? And secondly, what is driving these emotions? So what are the certain aspects of customer experience? Is it the wait time? Is it the employee attitude? Is it the ease of access, whatever that is causing these emotions? And finally, we also wanted to say, okay, what if we improve this area? For instance, what if we make an improvement in satisfaction, in delivery time, for instance, or ease of access, for instance? How much effect is it going to have in the ultimate outcome, in customer satisfaction, in my KPIs? So all these models that we built are around actionability. And we are trying to predict the angry customers and what's causing the anger in them, and what we need to fix first to address that anger, so that we can retain the customer, so that the customer becomes an ambassador, because we listened to the customer and we took action quickly, and the customer became an ambassador.